Przygocki. I'm a former resident of Hamtramck, and I've always had a love for the city. I was born here in Detroit at Detroit Women's Hospital. I spent my first 2 years with my mother and father. They had a rental on Parker Street, not far from Palmer Park, and in 1954, probably when I was 2, we moved to Hamtramck. I attended Pulaski Elementary School for kindergarten, then St. Lad's for first and second grade, so the library was directly on my route home between the home and the block away St. Lad's. My father's father came from Poland, and they lived on Comstock in Buffalo, and he operated a tool and die shop. My maternal grandparents are from Slovakia, and they both worked at the Chevy gear and axle plant their entire lives. And I used to enjoy coming by here and looking at the books and taking books out. Just found a lot of things that were interesting. Books kind of became part of my life in that time. And it was a really nice, friendly place, very child-friendly at the time. So I finished elementary school, junior high, and I graduated from Southfield Lathrop in 1970. We were the first graduating class out of that brand new high school. Well, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. One lives here in Rochester Hills and does environmental remediation, managing projects. I have another brother who has moved on, and he lives in Wyoming now, where he teaches at the university, teaching viola as a professor there, and my sister works as a manager for UPS in Los Angeles. So we're scattered all over right now. But I've always felt that Detroit has always been my home, and Hamtramck has been a place where I started out from. After high school, I ended up going to Wayne State University for 2 years, and Wayne State is another place that I've cared a lot about and also try to donate to on a regular basis. And after 2 years at Wayne State, I went away to Michigan State, mainly majoring in liberal arts, science, languages, so forth. I always had an interest in hard science and developed an interest in geology, and so when I went away to Michigan State, that's where I majored in geology and graduated with my bachelor's degree from Michigan State. Graduating from Michigan State, I went to do graduate work, and I had this very nutty professor who I loved very much and is still very much an important person in my life, and he was taking a job in South Carolina. And South Carolina was one of the last places I think I would have ever ended up, but I liked this guy very much. He was very challenging, so I decided to take a chance and go to a culture and a part of the country I never would have imagined myself living in, and really enjoyed the experience. I learned a lot, and it was a good place to go to school for geology at that time, and I got my master's degree there. Another example would be, as far as traveling, I got to spend a summer in Tunisia doing field work, and at that time I really developed an interest for seeing as much of the world as I possibly can. And then after graduate school, it was the recruiters were coming around from the oil companies, and I was fortunate enough to be offered a job by Mobil in 1977. I'd started a PhD and was getting a little burned out, so I said, well, I'll go to Mobil for a couple years and get some industry experience and then come back and do my PhD. And 36 years later, I still haven't gone back and got my PhD. When I started with Mobil was in Louisiana. Again, it was another move. At the time, Louisiana was very much, and New Orleans, the center of the oil industry, offshore Louisiana. And so I started there at the Mobil office as a production geologist, basically telling the drillers where to drill wells, helping them develop fields, and it was a very exciting and challenging job and I'm very fortunate that I've had a career that I've been able to enjoy for 36 years, and that's a huge part of enjoying life. So many people don't have the opportunity to have a job that they get up and go and do what they want to do, and I consider myself very lucky that I've had that opportunity. Yes, I've had bad jobs, I've had bad bosses, but when you can get up and do something you want every day, that's something you should be very happy with in your life. Well, I was very fortunate that, as I mentioned, I enjoyed traveling when I spent a summer in Tunisia, and so one of my goals has always been to be willing to move. And the first time I had the opportunity, I was with Mobil, and they had a job opening in Cameroon. And nobody wanted to go to Cameroon. So I said, I'll be happy to take that. So I got to go to Africa. I learned some French. I was responsible for all the operated wells there, as far as when a well was drilling, to make sure that from a geologic standpoint we gathered all the data that we needed. And I went back to New Orleans. I moved around quite a bit. And one of the last things at Mobil was in '92, I was just getting married. I got married relatively late in life, and I was offered a job to go to Germany, and I spent 4 years working in our German affiliate, which was wonderful. Chance to see a lot of Europe, to visit Poland, for example, and was very, very fortunate to have that time. And then in 2000, we had the merger, and once again, Exxon and Mobil were merged, and I was fortunate enough to be offered a job, and I've been in Houston ever since that time. About 12 years of my career have been spent in New Orleans on different times, and then another large chunk in Houston. And I've been working on projects in Chad, Nigeria, California, Angola, and Germany. My first trip to Poland was a business trip to Torun, where I got to put my hand in the Vistula, which I really appreciated, and that was looking at a geophysical opportunity. And then we went back on 2 separate occasions, one with my wife and young daughter, and we found my father's cousin in Gniezno, and we stayed with them, and then went on to Kielce, Zakopane, and Krakow and Auschwitz. And several years later, I shaved my dad into coming for a visit, and he got to meet his cousin for the first time. He was very surprised because he grew up his whole life in Hamtramck, spoke Polish, and was really surprised that it actually worked when he got to Poland. So he really enjoyed that visit a great deal, and I'm glad I got a chance to see Eastern Europe, especially at that particular time in those countries' history. I've been married for 22 years. My wife is Cheryl. She's from New Orleans. She has 2 children by our previous marriage, and we had them in Germany for a while. One is married and lives in La Place, a suburb of New Orleans, where she's a housewife. She had been doing child protective services in Georgia. She has the distinction of having lost two homes to hurricanes in Louisiana, one to Katrina and one to the recent one, Isaac. And my stepson Cameron lives in New Orleans, and he develops photographs for people who do photographs as art, high-end photography on the artistic basis, and he's well known for being the developer that people go to in the city. My daughter Sarah is 20 years old, working at Starbucks, going to community college, and is planning to go into radiology after 2 years. I still have one brother here. My father was living in Southfield until 2005 when he died of a heart attack, and I still come and see my brother on a regular basis. When it comes to my charitable donations, at my age, I am now at a point where I can start giving back. And when I look at my life and my career, it hasn't been perfect. I've made mistakes. Things haven't gone as well. But when you get to a certain age, you say, earning a C+ in life isn't such a bad thing. And so I think very hard about giving back. One thing that drives me is I work for ExxonMobil, and they have very, very generous matching gifts, and so that drives me to give to the Hamtramck Public Library, because I know that they will match dollar for dollar. And it was a couple of years ago that I just walked in here and remembered growing up here, remembered this neighborhood, and said, well, this looks like a cause where a modest donation could go a long way. And I decided to make that part of my annual giving.